Welcome to I Heart Geek.
And welcome to another episode of I Heart Geek. I'm so excited for this episode. Oh my gosh. So before we start and I introduce this amazing panel that we are doing a movie episode today. And I know that we used to do movie episodes as kind of the supplemental secondary episodes. And we're kind of changing that for a little bit for the next probably about 6 months. The movie
supplemental
episode,
or secondary, because those are distinctly different things.
It doesn't really matter. It's a second episode for the week. How's that?
Okay.
Sounds good. So yeah, we are actually kind of do a little bit more of a focal point with the movies, and every other week you should have a movie episode. And this week we have the movie episode. This is the movie episode that you have been asking for 3 years. We have The Princess Bride. Okay, I'm happy. Let me introduce our amazing panel real quick. I am Dub, and I produce this mess sometimes. And directly below me, we have Miss Satomi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited about this episode. I'm so excited.
I have a feeling there's a lot there.
It runs deep. Lots of levels.
Nice. And then sitting next to Satomi, we have Mr. PB&Jason. How are you doing today, sir?
Excellent. I also love this movie too. I wished forever that we were doing it. You wished forever we were doing it. So as you wish.
It took so long to make this one happen, and I don't know why. I really don't. And sitting above Jason and next to me, I guess that you're looking at on your screen, we have Sean, and his magical beard is back.
Magically trimmed up nicely. Look at that.
He could still hide a card in there, but he couldn't hide a can in there.
It's shorter, but it's still magically delicious.
He could hide a golf cart, but not a limo anymore.
That's right. I'm very excited for this as well. I don't know if anyone recalls, but I once said that the two movies that I would hope would have been in the challenges in Ready Player One for me to know word for word. One is Princess Bride, and the other one. So this is I'm very excited.
Outstanding. So what have you been up to real quick? I mean, we haven't heard from you in a little while, Sean.
Yeah, well, I was sucked into a vortex and I had to battle my way back to this reality.
I think that's the best answer you could have given.
It happens, man.
And my beard swallowed me. It was a beard.
Gotcha.
Wait, it was a black beard? Is that what you're saying?
Right, that's right.
Your beard became self-aware and decided
it could have been Bluebeard
to take over.
My beard achieved the singularity. This is all bad.
Nice. So, Princess Bride, what do y'all think? Okay, before we get into this, let's talk about and we're not in no farther than, but what was your first experience with this movie? This is a movie that I caught on video. I didn't catch it in theaters at first. And I caught the last half of it, and I was like, okay. And I liked it. I didn't love it. That was my first experience. Of course, this evolves. So we're going to go around, and I would like to hear everybody's first experience with the movie. Let's start with Satomi.
Well, it's funny. You don't always remember your first moments with a movie. And for me, it's clear as day. I was going to a double feature with a friend of mine to see Dirty Dancing in high school. So it was Dirty Dancing, and there was this other movie, The Princess Bride. What the heck is that? Sure, I guess we'll go watch it. And I watched Dirty Dancing, and I was like, yeah, that was fun. And then Princess Bride came on, and it finished, and I was like, oh, I am obsessed with this movie now. It was just, I enjoyed Dirty Dancing, but Princess Bride was just everything I wanted a movie to be.
But did you have the time of your life?
I did have the time of my life.
Did you watch it from the corner?
Okay. Nobody puts Satomi in the corner.
Oh, this is gonna be so bad. Well, let's jump out of this one. It's just so funny. Sean, what about you? Tell me about your first experience.
So mine was video, but there was a reason. I was so I'm an Air Force brat, and I was stationed in Okinawa, and there's this weird it was like this weird time rift that happened when we moved back from Okinawa, because it took everything from the States about 3 to 4 months to trickle over to the Far East Network, right? Where we got our entertainment.
Oh, I remember it well, yes.
Yeah, all the movies that came to the movie theaters and things like that. So it was like, by the time we had got stationed back in the US and got here, it had already come and gone in the theaters. So I missed that opportunity. It wasn't
Mhm.
until it came around on video. And it was one of those things where, mom and dad were like, let's go get a fun movie. And we saw the cover and we were like, oh, all right, we'll watch this one. And then of course, like my brother and I, on the mantle with sticks, many stitches and bruises, trying to recreate the fight.
Yes.
The fight, and we will get into this later, I promise.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was my experience with it. Was post hitting the time warp, I got to see that movie, the Okinawa time warp.
Amazing.
Nice. Jason?
I was a junior in high school when this movie was in the theater. And actually, it was in the summer, I think. So I was between being a junior and senior. And there's a lot of movies that that I love that I've seen that give you that first pow. You hit them that first time. Star Wars, pow. Logan's Run, pow. But then there's movies that I'll see that when I first see them, I'm kind of like, what is this all about? Like, I don't hate it, but I'm like, what's the deal with this? And like Napoleon Dynamite was one of those movies. And so was this. And I went and saw this with some friends at the theater, hearing people just going insane about this movie. This is just the greatest thing ever. So I went and saw it and I was like, okay, yeah, the sword fight's cool. Yeah, Andre the Giant, just cool. Because I saw him as a kid when he wrestled and stuff. And so Billy Crystal, yeah, okay, cool. Yeah. But then saw it and didn't give it a second thought. But like many movies later when it came out to video and many things I saw along with my, who at the time was girlfriend, who then became wife, seeing movies through the filter of having someone else there that you love and that, you see kind of see what they're seeing and the perspectives open up. Yeah, this movie became one of my top 10 all-time films easily. And then when I went and started reading, not really too long ago, I'd say within the last 5 years, when I started reading some of the behind the scenes stuff in this movie on how magical the making of it was, how much they loved each other, how the friendships that formed like between Billy Crystal and Andre the Giant and stuff like that. I was just like, yeah, there's real magic here. This movie is actually genuine magic.
Yeah, this movie is one of those rare, well, I don't know if it's even rare, but this is one of those examples that I could point at that this needed video. I don't think this was a good big screen movie. I don't know if I'm sitting alone in that. I mean, I would probably watch it on the big screen, but it doesn't appeal to me on that big screen nature.
I really think it has more to do though with the tastes of the time, because now we are much more used to a quirky, campy, fun, where we will accept something like that. Whereas back then, the quirky campy was really reserved for that B movie genre. It wasn't reserved for this really wholly unique, it didn't fit into a category because it was, and even the producers and the writers, Bill Goldman and Rob Reiner, all those guys were like, studio didn't know what to do with it because it wasn't categorizable, and that was really a symptom of studio culture at the time. We're much more broad with that now.
Dub and Satomi, you both make a really good point. Just really quick, Sean, since I cut you off, you look like you're ready to go, and I am jumping in. Fantasy had big to it. You always think big, especially special effects wise, big. And this was small. Everything about this movie looked and felt small. And that was like something that's kind of like, that whole impression that eventually you came to realize that this movie could be nothing but small for it to be as perfect as it is.
Yeah. No, it needed that. If you had that gigantic budget with those perfect special effects, it would have been a completely different film. It was that sort of throwback feel of, like almost a little bit of the Harryhausen thing, but without the deep claymation stuff. But just that where you can see the strings. That's probably a better way to put it. It's
that's a good thought on that.
Yeah, that's great.
And you're not, and they don't worry about that fact.
Yeah.
Because this is, when it comes down to it, this is a child's perception of a book his grandfather is reading him. So it doesn't have to be super realistic.
Yeah. Sean?
Yeah, I think it's interesting too. Like I brought up this concept before, but I'm curious if the way that film is now is kind of coloring that opinion at all, Dub. In that nowadays it's blockbusters in the movie. There is no movie house currently, but when we have theaters that are open, it's blockbusters in the movie, and something like this would have now been launched on a streaming platform. Like there's a clear differentiation that gap is
Yeah.
widening, and we occasionally do have, you know, the purposeful art film like The Lighthouse that came out in theaters, but by and large, you know, like Uncut Gems and The Irishman and those types of movies, that's all now streaming. You know, if that's the type of work you want to do, it's now released on TV. And
Yeah.
if you go to the movie theater, it's to see robots explode. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And
That's
they're
a great
both
point.
incredibly valid. Believe me, I want to go see robots explode and I want to see those art house films. But I think that it was a different time where I think that back then it may have played a little better on stage because we didn't have that set in our heads of, and even if it's just subconsciously, we didn't have it set in our heads that that type of film was released on a streaming platform now. You know, so I think that there's a good chance that, I mean, when a movie came out, we didn't have Netflix. You had to go see it in the movie theater, so we saw a wider scope of things presented on the large screen.
Mhm.
You know,
Good
That's a great
points.
point.
Yes.
Now, something I want to hit on a little bit because this is just kind of the most interesting thing in the world. They didn't know how to market this movie. Obviously, this is why it was a pretty much a colossal failure as far as the movie theater goes. However, they didn't market it right. You have, I mean, the name is The Princess Bride, and you see the cover of it, and there's a girl in a frilly dress, and it looks like Prince Charming in the background. What boy is ever going to want to watch this movie? Yet, ironically, this is the movie that really seems to have broken that barrier of a boy/girl film. It is a film for everyone.
Well, look at our panel today.
And it was exactly, and it was a terrible marketing plan how they did it all.
Awful.
However, it really I feel like this was one of the first movies to really break the wall. It wasn't a boy movie, it wasn't a girl movie, but it was marketed as a girl movie. And so
Can
a
I
lot of
tell
little
you
boys
that
were able to see that.
actually that card, that advertising card, was one of the reasons I didn't want to see it.
Mhm.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. I am female,
Mm-hmm.
but anything that smacks of, you know, overly,
Mhm.
quote
Girly.
unquote, girly. I don't
Mhm.
get me wrong. I love me some romance and I love me some flowers and stuff like that. But that how they marketed it, I
Yeah.
found a real turnoff because I'm not really like straight up romance. I need my girls to be a little salty, have a little bit of an opinion. And you know, I was the kid who played with I was more interested in the Lincoln Logs than my brother was, you know.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a tomboy by any means, but I think there was also this, God, I don't want to keep rambling on, but there was this idea of what girls were supposed to like and what boys were
Yeah.
supposed to like. And I think I was part of the generation that was like, uh, forget that. I'm just gonna like
Yeah.
what I like.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's discuss this a little bit. What is it about it that really did break the gender barrier?
Well, I think that there's a line in the movie that I think talks about that when he's like, "Is this a
Kissing.
fiction book?" And you know, and he's like, "No, there." You know, he talks about there's all these other things. There's the sword fights and the intrigue and the blah 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 and death and you know and I think that that is exactly it. I think that just because that it's a love story doesn't mean that
Mhm.
that's the sum total of what that movie is. There's so much more going on. It is an epic fairy tale, an adventure that happens
Yeah.
to have a love story in it. You know?
Yeah.
And let's
But
face it, every shoot 'em up,
Mhm.
every action movie, or almost every action movie, has a love story in it.
It does. It has to.
Mhm.
And this might have something to do with it. I think the smartest thing that they did that really did break that barrier was, the most minor character, which was Fred Savage. That he was so important to giving boys
Yep.
a step in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So important.
Mhm.
Well, that was weird. You guys just froze for a sec. It was amazing. But yeah, hey, I'm back. Okay, please go on.
Yeah, I think Yeah, you know, and it's funny because it was that was a era specific trope that wound up continuing on. Like I don't know if you saw, there was another movie called Whitewater Summer where with Sean Astin, where they did the same thing, where it would cut to him and he would have this more like modern take where he was this running commentary about what was going on. And I think that was what was really fun, was like, wait a minute, you know, we had we had someone that
Yeah.
represented us as an audience member going, wait, no, she can't marry him. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden Fred Savage going, wait, no, she can't, that's wrong, right?
Yeah.
You know, I just thought that was great, you know.
Everybody was represented. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Satomi.
I was just gonna ask, can I ask you guys, did you feel like you were able to see yourselves in the Fred Savage character?
That was the only character I saw myself in until I got older.
Okay.
But he's my age. I grew up watching Wonder Years. I mean, he is on a direct, you know, parallel with me as far as ages and interest at the time and everything else. He was an important character to me more than, you know, most people would admit to. But yeah, I definitely saw myself in the Fred Savage characters. I'm like, you know, and I had family that would tell stories and all that, and he very much was my step in. As I said, I saw it the second half, so it didn't really resonate with me until I saw the whole thing. And you had that character, I'm like, okay, I'm in. And then the end, like I don't know the word. I projected myself in, and I'm like, oh, I did like it, if that makes sense.
Right.
Two things to address real quick. One, the question that was asked a little bit ago about the girly film aspect of this. Interestingly enough, I didn't have that happen to me as a boy, because one, I was introduced to Princess Leia in 1977. So for me, seeing a salty, strong female character was not something that I ever thought unusual, because of the time that I saw Star Wars. I was very impressionable, 9-year-old, and cat butt, man, that's great. And so seeing that didn't have affected me. Plus, most of my friends in high school were girls, actually, so there was I didn't have that problem.
I think there's a big difference. Let me stop just for 1 second. I think there's a big difference there between, strong female characters, which I think by that point we were pretty much used to, but it's the marketing towards that character. I think there's a big difference there.
Sure, I agree. It was marketed
as far as what they screwed up, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, if you look at it, Buttercup is not necessarily a pawn.
No.
She's not salty, but she's also not, she's not necessarily this vulnerable, hopeless way.
But she's not Leia either.
But she's not Leia either. She's dealing with the restrictions of her time.
Mm-hmm.
They say the law of the land gave Humperdinck the choice of a bride.
Yeah.
So, she was like, well, I've got to be here. And when things did not go the way that she would want to, she was looking at suicide. Now, not the best choice, but
how dark is that for a kid's movie?
Yeah, right. But again, it's also a product of the time period where the piece is set, because at a certain point, there were only so many choices available to women.
Mm-hmm.
But she does stand up to him.
She does.
She comes in.
She stands up to Wesley too. I mean, she stands up to
does.
Dread Pirate Roberts.
Yes, she certainly does.
So the second thing about the grandfather thing, just to cover real quick, that was okay. Now, especially now, the subplot of Fred Savage and Peter Falk, grandfather, grandson, gives me more like gooey, ooey, nostalgic feels type things, more so than probably the entire bulk of the movie itself, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because their subplot is so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. It's the only word I can give it.
It's its own movie.
This salty, kind of crotchety grandfather. And funny thing is, like the mother, who has such a small role in that film, she says one of the most important lines in that movie to me that leaves me with like, it just lays out the picture of their relationship. And it's Fred Savage is like, the grandfather's there and he's like, can't you tell him that I'm sick? And she's like, you're sick. That's why he's here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, oh yes, of course. That lays it out, and then his magical line at the end even makes so much more sense
Oh my God.
because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that last scene. Ugh.
Because
Full
yeah, you
body
could see
chill.
their relationship is like is you know they banter with each other. He's kind of salty. He tells him to shut up. He tells him, you know, like you know, you see a you know, that sort of like you might expect between boys, sort of that boy banter, a little bit of an edge to him, but then it's obvious how much he loves him,
Yeah.
how much they love each
Well,
other.
if we're talking bromance, I gotta tell you, for me, it was all about the bromance between Inigo and
And
Fezzik,
Fezzik.
yeah.
which is
Yes.
epic.
For the identifying with the movie, I didn't so much identify with any character so much as I wanted to be.
Right.
Well,
Dread.
you wanted to be Wesley, yes?
Yeah, I didn't want to be Wesley. I wanted to
Really?
be Dread Pirate Roberts.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
I wanted to be this rogue with the heart of gold. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
because even though he's like, oh, he kills, he's merciless, blah blah blah. He's talking about, I wouldn't, you know, like he's honorable through the whole thing. You know, like he didn't kill Inigo. He didn't. At that point, those were his enemies. Those were people who were trying to kill him, and
Mhm.
yet he spared them. You know, and so he was identifying the honor. And then honestly, it's, and I know we'll get into it at some point. We have to. We're talking about Princess Bride, but the fight scene is the reason that I became a fight choreographer. You know, and like I saw that and had to do it.
You know what? Let's go there. Let's talk about the fight scene.
Wait, one quick thing, just to add to what Sean said. Yes, it's very interesting that he didn't kill Inigo and he didn't kill Fezzik, but he did kill Vizzini because he knew who the
Vizzini
real
killed
bad guy
himself.
was. He knew who the real bad guy was in that trio.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of the impressions that were given
Mhm.
at the very beginning. Inigo helped him up the mountain. Andre, you know, Fezzik didn't kill him with the rock. He could have right then and there. That fight could have been over.
Yeah.
But Vizzini was holding Buttercup at knife point.
Yeah.
So he knew.
Threatening to kill her, like in saying, if you step any closer, I will kill her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
And he couldn't abide by that. That's the one thing he could abide someone trying to kill him. He couldn't abide someone trying to kill the woman he loved.
And just before we go to the sword fight, the best dialogue in that whole movie is between Vizzini and Wesley. The best dialogue exchange.
The Battle of Wits.
Oh yeah,
the Battle of Wits.
I will not do it. I will not do it, but I can do Vizzini's part in that word for
Oh
word.
geez.
Oh, I bet you can. Oh,
I think we know it's going to go. I know it's going to go in the post-credit scene today.
If people stick around, I'll do a small section.
Okay, that works for us.
I just want to hear you do. Never start a land war in Asia when death is on the line.
So
yes.
Now going to the fight scene, everybody loves the fight scene. However, I have a differing opinion. Although I think that the sword fight is, in my opinion, and Sean corrected me on this, but in my opinion, probably the greatest fight scene ever recorded. Maybe my favorite scene, and probably because of the nostalgia, is when he was fighting Andre the Giant. Because I was 4'7", 4'8" or something in high school in drama class. And then I got matched up with a guy that was 6'6" and football player. And we did that scene. And that is, to me, I don't know if it's, you know, the nostalgia takes it up so many points. But
God,
I have
please
such
let there be
fond
video of that
memories
somewhere.
that. I wish there was. And he slammed me against the wall. I ran out of breath. I'm like, oh.
Why are you wearing a mask? Were you burned by acid or something?
No, they're very comfortable.
I think everyone will be wearing them in the future.
That is such a fun scene. Now, okay, we got that one out of the way. Let's talk about the scene.
Oh.
And I think that Sean needs to lead us a bit in this because that's just what you do.
For me, I think the thing that was the most brilliant about it is that if you, what they're talking about, the styles of swordplay are real, and they're really using them. So the research that was done in that fight was fantastic. The other thing is that the fencing is on point. You know, when you're watching them and they're like that's real skill. You know, so as we've learned, you know, there's like Arma and these people who go back and they study the old sword plates, and they're learning that through since we've been doing movies where people are swinging swords at each other, they're using them wrong. So far, they say that the closest one is the battle on the bridge with Jaime Lannister and Brienne of Tarth when the swords are being hit and then bound around each other, that's not even accurate, but it's more accurate. So, but one of the things that we did know that has kind of persisted is the way that we fence. And so the fact that they were talking about different styles and using those different styles and talking about adjusting for the rocky terrain was fantastic. The other thing that I want to point out is the conditioning that those two men had. To be able to be holding a casual conversation while they were doing that fight is unbelievable to me. So there is just, that's Sean the fight choreographer. Sean the kid was just like, I can't believe what is happening. You know, the other thing I forgot is that a good stage combat should have the same timing as comedy, right? It should have those same kind of like, oh, wait, what? Who? Ha? Who? You know, and people think it's got to be fast and aggressive, and that doesn't tell a story. So if you go back and you watch it, they're telling a story with the swords throughout, which is why when I corrected Dub earlier, what I said was, no, that's not opinion, that's empirical fact. But that's the greatest fight ever choreographed. You know.
So Sean,
it was
let me
choreographed by a master, by a fencing
two.
master, Bob Anderson. Excuse me, two.
Yeah, you read the book. Yeah.
Yes.
So let me ask you guys, because my fact on this is a little bit blurry, but was not the left-handed aspect of their sword fight filmed in a mirror? Isn't that how they did that?
No.
Nope.
They
Or,
learned it.
Yeah, I highly suggest the book As You Wish by Carrie Elways. He talks about this scene for a while. I think it's a full chapter talks about this. That was the last scene they recorded. They started training for it 2 weeks before.
It wasn't the last scene they recorded. The last scene No, the last scene they recorded was the kiss at the very end.
Okay, yes,
and
I do remember
they took
that.
like 7 takes.
But towards the end, how's that?
Towards the end. Well, especially because
it took a long time to get there.
Well, and Carrie Elwes kind of broke his, what did he break?
Was it his ankle? He was riding something.
I think it was his foot. He got on some.
It's an ATV. It was
ATV,
Andre's ATV.
He essentially pulled a Simon Cowell, and it just went a little too more faster. It had a little more power than he expected. Yep, and then tried to pretend it didn't happen.
Yeah,
which of course, you do that, it's just going to get worse the more pressure you put on it. So he actually was still operating with some pain by the time that they shot that, but he was well enough to do it.
And I want to throw this in. This is a very interesting fact from that book was that they did the whole scene, and then Reiner said, "You know what? I think it needs to be longer." So they were choreographing for months and months and months. And they had to actually, in the last 2 weeks, I want to say, they threw on another 3 minutes of action there, which included the jumping off and spinning, the flip. That wasn't there before, and that was just like they went and watched old Errol Flynn movies and all that stuff, and they said, "Let's find the best parts," and that's what they did. And they had Mandy Patinkin had some experience because he knew it was coming. Patinkin. I will always say Patinkin. I apologize. I try. But yeah, they really had no experience. And that is just so amazing that, like Sean was saying, this is exactly real. They brought in 2 masters and they did not want to use stuntmen. That was a point of pride for them. And there's something about that. I have a lot more respect for actors that will put out so much that they say, "No, I am doing this. This is what I am doing."
And I'm about to take a conversation off the freeway, but we can get right back on. But I wanted to also say that Christopher Guest and the fight that he did with Mandy Patinkin is equally as brilliant. And it's funny because I always thought that, of course, everyone noticed this. Of course, everyone saw this. But it turns out that a lot of people don't. And I think that I just assumed that people would, but I have a background with swords that, if you watch Mandy Patinkin before he kills Count Rugen, he mirrors every injury. He goes, if you watch, Mandy Patinkin stabbed here, stomach, cut, and cut. Yeah. And throughout the fight, he returns one for one, every cut, and gets him exactly in the same spots. And I think that it's just another one of those little details that shows how incredible he was. And I love too the fact that Carrie always talked about that in his motivation, he was not a better swordsman. than Inigo Montoya. He was driven by love. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The only
Passion.
one was because what was on the line, and otherwise that he was a better swordsman. And I just thought that sequence, and also Christopher Guest, like, you know,
Right.
Genius.
Another masterful moment of dialogue too, because you talk about the different moments in this movie where the dialogue was just masterful. Fazzini and Wesley, Inigo and Wesley in their initial sword battle. Count Rugen and Inigo, that last bit of dialogue with not only when he's cutting him cut for cut, but he's like, you know, offer me money, you know, and he's like, you know, the way that Christopher Guest like is terrified yet is in absolute fight or flight mode, but is going to at least try to get one last lunge in before he's killed. It's just,
he was
that's another moment that's amazing.
And brilliant dialogue, even though there's half of the scene is one line repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
Because that's his driving force. You're getting
and best line in the movie, in my opinion.
Yes.
There's an exchange between Wesley and Rugen that I think about all the time, and it has informed me like morally as well, which is right after the fire swamps when he says, let's get you back to your ship, and he says, we are men of the world, liars do not become us.
We are men of action.
Yeah.
And as a kid, I remember that, like, you know, that if I'm going to be a man of the world, liars do not become us, you know, like, and I just think, I just thought, like, yeah, Guest was brilliant. And I remember watching recently Waiting for Guffman, and with some friends, and they were like, who is this? Like, you know, they're not actors like we are, that, you know, and so they were like, who is this guy? And I was like, that's the six-fingered man. And they're like, no. And it's like, yeah, that's.
It took me a long time before I realized I knew that I made that connection.
He's like, you know, he's cut from the same cloth as Gary Oldman, just like a chameleon.
My real Christopher Guest experience started on when he was on SNL with Billy Crystal, and he was great, you know, on SNL. But I had no idea that he could play such one of the most dastardly villains, you know, in my film watching experience. I mean,
and one of the best guitarists.
He's up there again. He's in top 5 villains, you know, in my opinion. He's amazing.
Yeah, with very little stage time.
What's that?
With very little screen time, he said so much, and I don't feel like he had that much screen time in this movie. I don't know if I'm remembering that wrong, but he was just
a lot with the little no,
not a whole lot, but every moment was
it was
memorable.
Great.
Counted.
Actually, that's a point too. Like everybody who even had minimal screen time, Billy Crystal, Carol Kane. Again, you know, there's every scene had meaning.
Yeah,
you know, there was no throwaway fluff in this movie whatsoever.
Yeah, it was very
the albino in the pit of despair.
Yeah, exactly.
Genius.
Like,
oh my god.
My favorite when he goes
in the pit of despair.
You know?
Now I don't know if anybody else made this connection, but this is something that I almost got them confused as a kid in my kid mind. Is the Carol Kane and Billy Crystal characters felt so much so we'll talk about one of our other favorite movies, Neverending Story.
Yep.
So much like that married couple. I mean, I don't know if I think Neverending Story was first, so I don't know if Princess Bride might have lifted that a little bit, because it felt I mean, everything feels very, very, very similar, and I don't know if that's just my mind making connections that aren't there, but I feel like they're almost the same characters.
I think it's more just that it's sort of a human truth that you have those couples that are like that, and I know that Billy Crystal and Carol Kane, like, you know, on set we're throwing ideas back and forth and you know, playing off each other so beautifully. So I think it's more just those are some archetypes that they played into, that both of those sets of characters played into, because we see it all over the place. You know, the bunkers, for goodness sake. It's true. It's sort of a universal, you know, kind of like we're going to get really intellectual here, but like any Commedia dell'arte stuff, which is, you know, you've got these established characters.
No, you're right. And at that time, that comic duo trope, you know what I mean, was really important. You know, like you had to have that component. And you could say that you had a debate between Inigo and Fezzik, but not really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They didn't have, there was no R2D2 and C3PO in this movie, and so they, you know what I mean? They had that. They got to fill that spot.
Yeah.
Can we spend just a brief bit of time talking about Andre the Giant in this movie just for
Oh
a
yes,
moment?
please. Oh yes, please.
Okay, so I had the pleasure. I was a wrestling fan like Dub. I had the pleasure of going to the Showboat here in Vegas and seeing the Showboat AWA wrestling matches when I was a kid. I went to several of those, and on one of those, I got to meet as a child. I got to meet and shake the hands of Andre the Giant. So I know how huge that man was. I mean, there's nothing like standing in front of him in person and basically coming up to just above his knee and being like, and shaking his hand that is larger than your head.
And apparently he adored kids. I think
he was very gentle.
Because of his stature, he would make that extra effort.
Yeah, he was very gentle. I mean, basically I shook his finger, and it's like, but then now move way ahead to this movie. He was in very bad health.
He was at
overall.
the end.
Yes. Yeah.
And he charmed wrestlers in general. You hear the stories about how wrestlers kind of have a charm and mysticism about them that when regular people or even people meet them, they're like, because they're so like, they want to get to the man behind the curtain, and things like that. In wrestling, you're a heel or you're a face, you're a good guy, you're a bad guy. But here's the true Andre, I don't know how you say his last name. Someone might, but I don't. Starts with an R.
Russo.
The Giant.
The Giant, right? Yeah. And they loved him. They loved him, especially Billy Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And wasn't there a movie that Billy Crystal made?
My Giant,
right? That sort of illustrates.
And apparently he loved making this film. Like he would have people over and sit him down and show them the film. Oh, I made this movie, and
he was excited by it for the rest of his life.
Thrilled by it.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories, Mandy Patinkin talks about this when they were doing the Cliffs of Insanity, and they had the rig set up. It was basically a forklift that was lifting them on the side of a soundstage, and he was pretending to do the hand over hand, and there were 3 little bench seats that were built around him for the actors to sit on, and then were strapped to him. And apparently Wallace Shawn is terrified of heights, and was having anxiety, and sat down in front of him. And he said that as they started to lift up, Wallace Shawn started to have a panic attack. And apparently Andre the Giant looked down at him and he said, "You're scared? Don't worry. I'll take care of you. I'll take care of you." And he said, he started petting his head.
Pet his head.
And he said, and Wallace Shawn calmed down and was only able to get through that scene because Andre the Giant said that he would take care of him. And it's like, what a gentle soul, what, like a true gentle giant,
Just beautiful.
Yeah. I love that story.
And just again, knowing how much physical pain he was in, and to then put out such a performance. I mean, such a performance.
He finally did something right. Don't worry, I won't let it go to my head.
I mean, if he wouldn't have been a wrestler, I would have liked to have seen what he could have done with as a career as an entertainer. While wrestling, I don't think shortened his life that much. It did a bit, but he would have been in a lot less pain. But he had the giantitis. I don't know what the term is, but he never stopped growing till the day he died. And that's painful on the body. That's why his teeth look so tiny. He kept growing. But I would have liked to have seen what he could have done if his career would have been as an actor, because I think he is probably the greatest saving grace of that movie. His very presence just made it a better film.
Everybody's did. It was definitely an ensemble film. Where all those pieces fit together so beautifully that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah,
Hollywood likes its
they
stars.
did it perfectly well, because though the Princess Bride is, though Buttercup is kind of the title character, who was that movie about? Like, really, if you look at it,
whoever you want it to be about.
On that, it's it's just such a well written story. You know, I mean, I remember the only thing when I was little is I was like, when he's like, we've learned the secrets to the fire swamp. I'm like, you didn't learn, unless the secrets of the ROUS is that they're flammable. Like, they're still going to be like, okay, we get it. You can identify the lightning sand. You can, you know about the fire spurts, like, and you know how to avoid those. But the ROUSs are still going to be a problem. So,
Yeah.
Although we
does
have them
any-
in New York
so good.
City.
Does anybody have any,
They're called cockroaches.
does anybody right? Does anybody have any insight as to the very, very memorable role of Peter Cook as the impressive clergyman?
Oh,
Maoids.
Does
What brings us
anybody know
Maoid
how
is
together?
that how
what
that
brings
came
us
to be, that
together
they chose to do
today.
that like that? Because, oh my God, is that not just brilliance? To like,
yeah, you know, I would hope that, I know that what the directorially, if you look at it, like the move would be, okay, you've got to make this painfully long. And then he had to go, okay, can I do it like this? You know, like, I love that. I
a
love
dweem within a dweem. I just,
Which
yeah.
what
Definitely feels like
moment
there's
in
improvisation
the
there.
movie that is pop culture gold got its own meme. That one.
Right.
The only thing, like, there really aren't many other Princess Bride memes except for marriage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no, just and like you said, it's every cameo. It's every small, you know, every person that shows up in it, it matters. You know, it brings something to the movie. It's just brilliantly done.
Yeah, I can't think of a single character or prop even in that movie that is not important to me in some way. It's important to the movie. And I wish people could figure out how to write more like that. But I mean, I don't know if that's a once in a lifetime film, kind of is, but it is something that they figured out how to make everything important.
I
And the
think
more you watch, the more important everything is.
I mean, I bet there are scripts out there, but they're running into the same issues that Bill
Mhm.
Goldman did, and Rob Reiner did once he took it on, is just finding the studio that's going to believe in it. Because honestly, that they're going to stick to the cereal that they know kids want to eat, and it's terrifying because there is so much money that goes into it to try out a new cereal,
Yeah,
Mhm.
or
just
to see if they would want oatmeal instead.
I'm taking a risk on lightning in a bottle. You know what I mean? And there's no way
Yeah.
to know whether or not this is going to be lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. The,
So would you guys say that this is the most requotable movie of all time?
Close.
One of.
Yeah, I'd put it in my top 5, probably top 3. But yeah,
The only thing that would have made it more quotable is if Bruce Campbell was in there somewhere spitting out lines, because everything he says is quotable.
I'm gonna go out and say I think that for me this is the top. This is the number one.
That's with Monty Python in the mix?
Yeah. Yes. Even
Really?
with Monty Python in the mix. This is the movie where you remember. I can probably remember the most quotes from this, and still find application all the time in real life. Especially like, you keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. I mean, oh God.
and PB, I think that opinion, it doesn't really cause any harm.
Right, but it
very, very
it's
short
probably
on
because it's full of charm.
No more rhymes now. I mean it.
Anybody want a peanut?
That line right there kills me.
And the fact that Andre delivers it makes it even better. It's just awesome.
I think it's moments like that though that make the characters so very human and so very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like the intention that's underneath that scene, that Fezzik has once again been mean to Andre the Giant. Once again has made him feel like an idiot. And Inigo takes the time to go over and have this moment with him to, oh, you're so wonderful at rhymes. It's just all of it, that it wasn't just, oh, we have this quirky thing that he likes to do, that he likes to rhyme words. It was to develop a relationship between those two, to show the care between those two.
And just it didn't last too long because of Wesley breaking it up, but just the relationship between Fezzik, Inigo, and Vizzini, that dynamic, this little mean, evil, balding guy making Andre the Giant back up
Yeah.
because he's intimidating him. I mean,
Like a
just
little angry Chihuahua, you
Yeah,
know,
it's
like
just-
barking at the Saint Bernard, you know.
yeah.
No, I
And
do wanna-
Wallace Shawn, oh my God.
Oh, well,
Talk about
genius.
requotable. I mean, he delivers some of the
Inconceivable line
some
is
of the
honestly,
inconceivable.
and
I mean,
that will
some
be
of
on his gravestone.
Yeah, you know, and it's so funny because it was just the gentleness and the childlike nature with which Andre the Giant delivered his lines that made so many of them so quotable to me. And there are ones that don't, you know, they probably wouldn't make the list of 10 that for me are my absolute favorites. Like one of them was just under his breath, just quietly, Inigo, I hope we win. You know,
Yes.
what a wonderful little boy. You know,
Yes.
it's such a great quality.
But I
Yeah.
guess I want to wrap up. If we're probably getting close. I think that the greatest line delivered in that movie was not with the main cast. It was Peter Falk delivering "As You Wish" to Fred Savage. That is choking me up now thinking of it because it's the line that says everything about their relationship, everything about the relationship between a grandfather and grandson, and it took all of the salt that they had through that whole movie of, oh, this book is stupid. Oh, you just, pay attention. Oh, shut up. Oh, this, oh, that. Oh, all their little banter. And it's like, because he explained what "as you wish" means. He explained it early in the story, what "as you wish" actually means.
Mm.
Like, will you come back and read it to me again? And just the look and the delivery is perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
Let me ask one last question on that line. Going back to you as, I probably 10 or 11, I think, when most of us watched this, give or take. Did you think that in your kid mind, like, oh, is he telling his story? Was he telling his story this whole time? Is he Wesley? And that stuck with me for years. And yes, it's a fantasy and all that, but going back, I was like, I really thought for, a while, like, oh, that was his story. That's amazing.
Yeah. For me,
I can't say I ever thought that, but I thought to myself that this showed the wisdom that grandparents often have, because grandkids, like Fred Savage's grandkid, probably thought in many ways as, oh, he just doesn't get it. Oh, he criticizes that I play video games, but he just doesn't get it. He's an old guy. He just doesn't get it. No, young child, this man gets everything and understands everything. And he humors you, but he understands everything.
And that
because
brilliant
he loves you.
And where he's patting it. Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
And Peter Falk is so brilliant, period.
The takeaway for me in that last scene was one of those things that was super important to me for the rest of my life, was because I was already a reader, but just the power of a book, put down the video game, and then the fact that in the end that this magical fairy tale, the story, the power of word, the power of story was again the thing that could connect the generations. And that instead of, him going, let's watch a movie or something, he said, can you come read it to me again?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's a show, and maybe we'll have to read this one again sometime. Satomi, real quick, tell us about your charity that you'd like to talk about.
Oh, I love to talk about BroadwayHearts.org. You can check us out. Oh, sorry, that's our website, Broadway Hearts. We bring music to kids in hospitals and then help them as they integrate back into life after their stay. So, started by Broadway performers, and now we have a little more flexibility in that, and
Awesome.
it's wonderful, especially right now.
It is something that you guys should check out. I've checked it out quite extensively. I'm giving to the scholarship fund that they have. I think it is an amazing, amazing charity out there. The money doesn't seem like it's going to anywhere but where it needs to go to, period. And that's important to me personally. Check out our Patreon and our Redbubble and all that other stuff. And I'm going to kick myself, but we didn't talk about that fantastic song at the end. So until next time, I'm Dub. Let's see, and with me, because we can't really do this normally, we have Sean and his magical beard. We have Miss Satomi, and we have PB&Jason. Keep on geeking on, guys. We love y'all. And if you want to stick around till after the credits, you can have a little surprise. Well, not a surprise, but you get a little extra performance from Sean himself.
You have been listening to the latest episode of the iHeart Geek Show. Make sure you visit our website at www.iheartgeekshow.com. Make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you check us out on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And keep on geeking on to all of you geek rock stars.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? You've beaten my giant, which means you're exceptionally strong, so you could have put the poison in your own goblet, trusting on your strength to save you. But you've also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied. And in studying, you would have learned that man is mortal, so you would have wanted to put the poison as far from yourself as humanly possible, so it can clearly not choose the wine in front of me.
You're just stalling.
You'd like to think that, wouldn't you? That's
Oh,
great.
Truly,
I
you
put
have
us
a
in a
dizzying
loop. I put us in a
intellect.
loop.
Yeah, that's okay.
Truly, you have a dizzying
Oh.
intellect.
So good.
Wait till I get
Wait till I
going.
get going. Where was I?